Hi everyone, this is Antispin versus Backspin using a penholder grip. In this one what you'll see is you'll see me doing a backhand to start with. You'll then see me go to the forehand of the penholder grip, and I'll finish with some reverse penholder backhand. Not that necessarily there's going to be a big call for people to use anti-spin on their reverse penholder backhand, but I know we have at least one member who's using a penholder, long pips on the forehand and anti-spin on the backhand. So just for you, Peter, I'll attempt to do a few of my own, and just let you know that it just about destroyed my shoulder as well. Felt very clicky in my shoulder joint, so I hope I don't have to do too many of them in the future. I hope you have better luck than me. I'm using just an ordinary, this is one of my old defensive blades with smooth normal rubber on one side and Yasaka anti-power 1.9 to 2 mil sponge on the other side, the black side. So again, compared to the long pips, the anti-spin has a tad more control. It's a little bit easier to hit with and slightly less effect. So what we're looking for in this particular videos is not so much the fact that I'm demonstrating perfect penholder technique, but you will see that again the principles of being able to stay balanced, to recover, and to keep your technique consistent between shots is what I'm sort of aiming for here, to allow myself to improve my percentages as I go over the course of the video. Obviously, to start with, I'm fairly erratic because I don't play a lot of penholder, and then I slowly get better as I continue to adjust and just try and make my technique more consistent. The basic way I hit in penholder will be the basic way I hit without a lot of training, so really I'm just concentrating on keeping the form fairly consistent so that I can then just adjust my bat angle to get the right sort of angles. So let's get into it. Starting on the backhand side here, again just as with the long pip video, I'm just doing really one push, one safe roll that I would tend to use in my matches, and then one harder hit to attempt just to demonstrate what can be done hitting harder with the anti-spin. I found, although it is easier to hit hard with the anti-spin in this penholder version, it's by no means a high percentage shot. It's not that my technique is awful, but certainly I'm not used to finding the right bat angle yet. So you can just see here, and it's probably worthwhile for those of you who are penholder and just looking to get a bit of a pointer on the technique to go back again. You can really see how the elbow is really the hinge in this joint. Everything happens around that elbow joint. Very little straightening of the elbow. It's swinging from the elbow more than anything else. The free arm still doing its job of balancing. Right shoulder still coming forward a little bit to give me some room for a backswing. The stance is in that slightly forehand stance. Contact point fairly similar actually, still mainly between the left hip and the belly button. On occasion I do take it a little bit wider, just such as there, though I should be moving. That's a little bit better, doing some movement. And the grip itself, possibly my grip was a little bit tight because I know my hand started to cramp after a while. So if you can keep your grip relaxed, I'm sure those of you who are pen holders probably don't have any problems with the fingers cramping. The recovery here is really, I'm staying on the backhand, which is not a great thing. Now I'm flipping out to the forehand, and that's how it should be, getting back to a relatively neutral position so I'm ready to go to the forehand or the backhand side. And then when I forget about it, I go straight back to waiting on the backhand. It's more because it's I guess an unfamiliar position for me to be in playing this penhold type stroke. Again, you can see there's a little bit of lifting of the elbow, but not a lot. probably less in this stroke than there is in my shakehander version. The actual elbow itself doesn't lift anywhere near as high as it does when I'm hitting in the shakehander version, where it comes up almost to shoulder height. But the technique is fairly repeatable, doesn't look too awful, and my consistency, while not perfect, is not too bad. Moving now to the front view of the forehand. Again, you can see how the free arm and the left shoulder are really moving over, pointing towards that target, helping me get that shoulder rotation. Possibly playing with a little bit too much bend in my elbow. You can see my elbow's really almost at 90 degrees. You would get more power if you allowed that elbow to straighten out a little bit more. But again, that's a habit back from my shakehand play, where I do still have a fairly bent elbow. It's something I'm working on to try and get my elbow a little bit straighter, and get back from the table to give me that extra recovery time. Again, the stroke itself, you can see with this push, just a very simple, efficient push at the ball. Apart from the slight grip change, it's really the stroke itself. You could virtually superimpose the shakehand push on the penhold push. The bat angle and the stroke is really not very much different there. The shoulder turn works the same, feet position really the same, recovery the same, and just a slight change in the grip angle and finger position obviously on the back of the blade. But again, what I'm looking for here is repeatability, consistency of my technique to allow me to get to a successful outcome faster and then be able to repeat it over and over. The roll is really, I'm not looking to land the ball too deep on the roll. I'm not looking to go with too much power on the roll, mainly because what I'm doing is usually with the roll I'm trying to change pace. If my opponent is back, I want to bring him in, so hitting too deep makes it actually a little bit easier for him, and hitting too hard makes the pace a little bit too similar to my inverted side. Hitting on the forehand with the anti-spin, definitely much easier, even with the penhold, didn't feel too different to a normal hit. I struggle a little bit with the bat angle. I think you find, as you penholders would know, the thumb pressure and the finger pressures on the back control the bat angle a lot, and in comparison to a shakehand grip, and so I'm just finding that I'm trying to lock down my bat angle, and that's probably why my fingers were cramping, whereas typical penholders can be much more flexible in their grip. But again, you can see here it really is fairly similar. I'm not saying the technique is perfect, but definitely consistent, which allows me to zero in on better results faster. Okay, just for Peter and for everybody else, to give you probably a bit of a chuckle, you're going to see here my attempts at a reverse penhold backhand with anti-spin. The push there, really, I'm not saying that anybody would want to push like that when you could be pushing with the forehand, the front of the bat, but it just demonstrates that the technique is possible to do. Really not that hard, I found, and not too hard to move it around the table. One thing I did find with this reverse penholder backhand is, firstly, it's very difficult. I found it very difficult to get down the line. I would need to go a little bit further in my stance towards a backhand stance to allow me to face that backhand, face this right hand side, get it onto your right. The ball has very much a tendency to curl to the camera's left and keep going that way. It's very hard to fight it, and also it really does that top spinning stroke, the roll and the hit, does awful things to my shoulder joint, and I can feel it click every time. Certainly I would never make a reverse penholder backhand player. Again, what I'm looking for here is I'm fighting for a consistent bat angle on the roll. The push is quite easy because it's fundamentally a matter of hold the bat there. There we go. hold the bat there and just leave it alone. When you're trying to roll with this and trying to hit with this, I found it very much more difficult to keep a bat angle that doesn't change through the stroke, because the natural range of motion is to actually move a little bit from the camera's right to the camera's left, or from the person who's playing it for a right-hander, to move to my left to my right. There's a natural curl in the stroke with the way that the wrist works. So it's much more difficult for me to keep a consistent bat angle, and as such what you'll see in this video, if you have another look, you'll see when I'm rolling I really do tend to spray the ball low to high as I fight to find a consistent bat angle. Also finding it quite difficult to get that ball down the line. Sort of the middle of the table is about as far as I could comfortably go. But other than that, the keys are still the same. Looking for a good consistent backswing. I'm balanced and attempting as hard as I can to get a consistent bat angle, even though I do find it quite difficult myself on this backhand side. Now going to penhold with the anti-spin from a side view. The principle's fairly the same, just hitting there. The push, almost an exact equivalent of the shake hand push. Slight technical differences obviously because of the hand being essentially turned a little bit more, sort of a quarter turn towards the right to grip, being a penholder, makes the stroke a little bit different, obviously technically, but the principles are still the same, to push through the ball without actually attempting to chop too hard. Let the backspin of the ball just turn into topspin and dip the ball down. When rolling, the idea is to really, you can see my backswing is basically almost a 45-degree roll, just letting the spin do the work, just quick and easy like that. Whereas with the hit, the bat tends to go back further and a little bit more forward through the ball to get that pace. So the roll being much more upwards compared to forwards, and the hit being much more forwards compared to upwards. Again, just searching for that consistency in my bat angle, staying in that forehand stance so that I could transfer to a forehand hit if required. I'm glad no one's asking me to twiddle it, because I don't think I'd be able to do a very fast twiddle of this penhold grip. But the forward lean is the same, wide stance is the same, and really just looking there, an easy roll, and the hit obviously going a lot deeper. How hard you hit, just while I'm here, the difference between that roll and the hit can again be blurred. You can sometimes hit somewhere in between the two, and what to use when is quite important. I tend to use the roll as an occasional opening to set up my inverted. Some players would rather hit hard the first time and look to finish the point with the anti-spin, using the variation to basically finish it there and then. And that is where it comes into a matter of tactics and choosing tactics and techniques that suit your particular style. And I'll speak more about that just in a second. Just picking up while we look at the forehand version here, and this is a good chance to see not only the shoulder turn, the waist turn and the placement of the feet, also the contact point. It's certainly not, occasionally you can actually see the white of the ball, the orange of the ball against the black of my shirt and shorts. Sometimes you'll see it just like there and there. Other times you'll see it, I'll catch it earlier. And what you're usually finding there is what I'm doing is I'm using the timing of the ball to allow me to change the direction of the ball as well. I'm not as familiar using penhold to use my wrist to adjust the direction so much. So what I'm really doing is when you see me taking the ball later, I'm usually going down the line. when you see me take the ball a little bit further in front of my body, I'm going a more cross court, and I'm using my timing to adjust where the ball goes rather than trying to bend my wrist. Simply because I'm in this penholder grip, I'm trying to mess with as little things as possible to go wrong, so that I can set a decent example. Obviously, one of the great benefits of the penholder grip is the wrist is flexible, but certainly for me to go on video here, it's not something I wanted to try and play around with a lot, because you'd just see me making a lot of unforced errors, which is hardly something I think people want to see me be doing. You're seeing enough probably as it is. Where I was talking about the use previously, just the choice between rolling and hitting, it's a matter of, each has its own advantages, and it's a matter of selecting one that suits your particular style, so that you get the best benefit. I tend to roll with my long pips much more than I hit, and I look to use the long pips to set up my attack, partly because, being someone who loops with a lot of topspin, the roll works for me much better than a drive. Those of you who have been reading the website recently would have heard me talking about how I'm starting to try a brushing loop motion, which is with the long pips, which is proving to be quite successful, and I'm hoping that will continue. I'll keep you all informed on that as months to come. But basically, it's a matter of me selecting stuff that suits my technique. Whereas if you have an anti-spin or a long pip and you're quite comfortable to drive the ball, if you have a good success ratio, you may then be looking rather than a slow roll, you may be looking to penetrate, hit hard with the anti-spin. Look to, if they return it to your anti-spin, put the ball away. If they go to your inverted side, put the ball away with the other side. And rather than using it as a setup itself, you may be using it as a strong attack in itself, and try and use a push to get the setup. So just finishing with a side view of the reverse penhold backhand. You can see here I do tend to straighten up a lot during the stroke, possibly because it's a little bit unfamiliar for me. Also, I think partly because just my shoulder was very uncomfortable doing the rolling and hitting. I didn't like it very much, and so I was trying to make it a little bit easier in the lift, I think, lifting up with my body as well. So not necessarily a great example to follow in terms of the lift of my upper torso. Possible here to again see that the elbow movement on the roll and the hit, a little bit more movement. I'm trying to use the elbow a little bit more to spare my shoulder a little, and generally staying in that backhand stance, occasionally stepping forward to push the ball coming in with the right foot, whereas really a shuffle would be better, and then returning to the backhand stance. Again, it on the push it definitely looks awkward, but is quite simple. So whether you chose to push you could use it as a variation, I guess, of your usual front of the racket, and it would save you having to twiddle. So it would definitely be one possibility to do it that way while you're learning to twiddle, just flipping the racket over. This roll and hit with the anti-spin though on the back, with an anti-spin, rolling yes, and hitting perhaps, I'd be probably saving it for balls that are up high with certainly what I'd call chance balls that are give you a higher percentage. I wouldn't want to be trying to lift a very low ball and trying to be aggressive with the anti-spin off a low ball, because you'd simply be fighting percentages. And again, you can see here I'm just keeping the stance wide, staying balanced. I was getting towards the end a little bit better with my bat angle, not those particular shots, but I was getting a bit more comfortable with the hit. The cross-court hit is comfortable and you get a nice bit of curl. Down the line again, a little bit more difficult, but it's a good example, I guess. Not saying it's a perfect example of reverse penhold backhand technique with anti-spin, but it certainly shows what can be done with someone who's really never done it before, just trying to stay consistent. So just to finish, again, I have no claims to be a wonderful example of penhold technique, and even less in terms of a reverse penhold backhand with anti-spin. So try not to fixate too much on using me as a model of excellent technique. There's certainly videos out there on YouTube of pro players that would be a better model to follow. Instead, what I'd say is to take away from here as an example really of just someone who's basically unfamiliar to the grip, using principles that are universal regardless of grip. Basically the idea that if you stay balanced, if you try and stay consistent with your technique, and when things go wrong, try and just identify what's wrong, change one factor to make an adjustment rather than trying to change too many things at once. And if you work like that, what you can find is that even though you may be in an unfamiliar situation, using an unfamiliar grip in my case, you may come up against a player who's got a very heavy spin that you're not used to, or more power than you're used to, or something like that. The idea being is by changing one factor at a time, trying to keep everything else consistent, you can quickly, or at least more quickly, zero in on the correct bat angle, the correct stroke to play, and adjust and get a much better result than if you try to change a lot of things at once and then find that some changes are working for you, some changes are working against you, and you find it very hard to get that consistency. So even for someone like myself who's only ever dabbled in penholder, never really used a reverse penhold backhand, I'm not saying I'm a wonder at it, but the principles are there. You can see that really all I'm doing is trying to use my basics, get consistent, get that right bat angle every time, and slowly adjust it until I can come up with an acceptable result. And that's a good principle for anyone to follow, really. So again, when things are going wrong, small changes will allow you to zero in on get your corrections a lot faster.